thank you for joining me today. I want to talk to you today about what's now called a suspension of a criminal record, a record suspension, if you will. This used to be called pardons in Canada, and many people still use that term. So if I use the term pardon, it's interchangeable. But the correct term is now record suspension. So what happened was on March, I think it was 13 of 2012, the government of Canada changed the rules, and they made it a longer process to get a pardon. So for example, before that date, if you were convicted of, say, an assault charge and you received a fine on, say, day one, you could apply, and it was a summary conviction case, you could apply to receive a pardon 3 years after that date. And then it would take, well, the government would take their sweet time in giving you the pardon, but maybe up to a year or longer before they get around to expunging, that is, pardoning your record. So that law completely changed. It made it a longer process on March 13, 2012. So what happened on that day is legislation was put in place so that it had to be 5 years after the end of your sentence before you could apply for a record suspension on a summary conviction matter, and 10 years on a more serious indictable matter. So it really changed the rules, and a lot of people were a little bit ticked off at this because it really, in one case doubled and almost doubled for summary conviction, doubled for indictable. There was a recent case, and of course they made it retroactive, which was really troubling. So people who were convicted before March 13th now had to wait the longer period instead of the 3 and 5 year periods. There's a recent case out of British Columbia that said, look, at this retroactivity portion of this, that's not constitutionally valid. And what does that mean? It now means that Ontario, at least Ontario and BC, have recognized that if someone was convicted before March 13th of 2012, they can apply under the old regime. That's very important to know. If you're convicted and sentenced before those dates, that you can apply at 3 and 5 years. So I say to you, it's very important to try and expunge your record, to get a record suspension, because at least it's going to be off a computer, for employment purposes, etc. The government's still going to keep a record of it somewhere, but that's not visible to the public. But, for employment purposes and getting on with your life and getting rid of the stigma of that criminal record, it's a very wise option to take. And I really encourage you to do that. If you have a criminal record that needs to be expunged, you need to get a record suspension.